What is a diode? A diode is a device that allows current to flow in one direction, but prevent it from flowing in the reverse direction. A diode is like a door here. If the wolf pushes a door from this side, he could not open it, unless the wolf destroys the door. However, when the wolf pushes the door from the other side, he could easily open that. And this is exactly what a diode does for the current. How could we draw the graph for a diode? We provided data sets for this online lab section. As I mentioned, you could use a whole data set, or you could just use 10 trials for each table. What I hope to emphasize is that when you choose your data, make sure the data you select can give a holistic picture. For example, you don't want all of your data to be negative. You want your data with a range of voltage instead. This holds when you take data yourself in the lab room. Before you make a graph, take a second to think about what you want to convey while this graph. What exactly you are supposed to demonstrate in this graph. As for this lab, all focus is on Ohm's law. What you are supposed to answer in this graph is that if the diode follows Ohm's law, what are the characteristics of a diode? So after you choose sufficient data and plot out the data point, think about this. Is that reasonable to draw a straight line? That is, could a straight line be the best fit line for all the data points? And should it be straight, considering the property of a diode? If you consider the purpose of this lab and the characteristic of a diode, you shall know that you should never draw a linear line for the graph of a diode. A linear line singles Ohm's law, while a diode does not follow that. Most of you did know that diode does not obey Ohm's law. While plotting it in the wrong way, it might be that most of you draw the graph electronically, and it's quite easy to add a straight line or quadratic line there. I didn't see such a problem in the previous year when I taught the labs in person. Previously, our graphs were handmade in class. That's also why you got a bunch of graph paper on your lab menu. I have no objection to plotting electronically. Plotting by hand can be tedious, and you may never need to do that outside this class. I guess one good thing about plotting by hand is that you are less likely to do it wrong, and you might slow down and take time to understand. Again, I think it's totally fine if you do it electronically. It could be much more helpful for you. But the bottom line is, don't do anything wrong or confusing. The purpose of a graph is always to convey certain information. If you draw a linear line on this graph, people can't tell if the diode follows Ohm's law. The graph itself is contradictory. However, based on this graph, can you answer if the diode obeys Ohm's law?
Pretty obvious.